Father, I just thank you for what you're doing in this house with this family. I just love the idea that people of like minds can come together and actually express different viewpoints and still be of like mind because our focus is on you. So, Father, I pray that tonight we could just express what we want to express, say the things that we want to say, and it all be the revelation of you, of your Son, Jesus. I thank you for the culture of this place. I vow to protect it, and I pray for that strength to do so. I pray that we all have that desire in our heart to protect this culture here. We love you, and we know it's the culture of your kingdom, so we'll fight for it. And we know that there's things we need to fight for. And this is worth it. So, Father, be here. We know you're here because we're here. We love you, and you love us. So just be in the midst of this conversation, wherever it may go. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. Um, I want to talk tonight a little bit, or I don't want to talk. I want to discuss with you a little bit emotions. I'm not even exactly sure how to start this, but I think the most real we can be is emotional at times. I mean, when you see someone who's truly emotional and like in the midst of their emotion, that's really like the curtains are opened up on the stage of their life, and you're seeing uh, the actual realness of a person. Um, but I think emotion gets a little bit of a bad rap, and I think the way I want to start it is I want to do a little bit of what Mark does, and what we kind of get what we become accustomed to doing is writing some things on the board and getting your ideas out. But before we do that, the Bible addresses emotion a lot. It talks about it a lot. And in the Beatitudes, Jesus says, blessed are those who what? Mourn, right? For they will be comforted. And I love the concept that the mourning needs to come before the comforting. And I think a lot of times what happens is we never get to the comforting part because we don't allow ourselves the mourning part. So we need to get that mourning portion out of the way. Like, we need to get it out of the way. We need those emotional times and to be real with them in order for the comforting to come. But there's a lot of times we have blockage when it comes to our own emotions. So what I want to do first, so that we can actually start a conversation, is create two categories. Is that big enough to see? Okay. I'll tell you a secret. I usually write small because I can't spell. So when I write small, people can't really check my spelling. Is that spelled right? Okay, thank God. So to start this conversation off, what I want to do with you, or what I want you to do actually, is I want to start categorizing emotions. And I don't want to categorize, I want to categorize it in, there's certain emotions that we have, I guess, in our life categorized as righteous and unrighteous emotions. And I just want to get your ideas of what you would put in a righteous category and an unrighteous category when it comes to emotions. So why don't we just start with someone saying something? Yeah. Anger. Okay. Cool. Joy. Righteous, obviously. I don't know. Jealousy. Yeah, under unrighteous. Discipline Is discipline an emotion? It can be. Um, maybe we need to be disciplined in our emotion. Depression. Is depression an emotion? Tell me where to put it. First, depression. Pride. Where do you want me to put it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm sorry. Fear under what? Under both. Okay. Okay. What else? Huh? I'll put in parentheses proud because I wonder at times if pride is the stance we take and being proud is the emotion. Um, I think you're right. Pride is the thing that ultimately was the downfall, right? And it's the downfall of a lot of us many times. Pride. Um, there's nothing wrong with being proud. It's just when that starts to make its stance in your being, right? Um, doubt, doubt, unrighteous. Doubt. What else? Annoyed. Both annoyed. Annoyed. Did I spell annoyed right? Thank you, hon. She was. I looked to her. I'm gonna underline that. You tell me. Right now, I'm just writing down what you guys. Righteous doubt. I like that idea. Is there righteous depression? I actually want to get into that because we'll talk about that a little bit later. Because I do believe that there's some emotions that the Father has never displayed. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm not going to put it up yet. Grief. Okay, that's a really, really, really good one. Um, I don't think that anxiety is close to fear. Um, where do you want me to put it? Unrighteous. Okay. I kind of want to circle this. Sadness. Lost. Confusion. Can I put confusion? Okay. Where would you want me to? Both. You see how small I wrote that there? You get that? Spelling makes me anxious. Like you don't know sympathy. Okay, I was just gonna ask that. Is sympathy ever unrighteous? Too empathetic? It's pity because I can find scriptures that show that the Lord showed pity. Okay, I'm gonna put sympathy down here. Hmm. What else? What else? What else? Anticipation, righteous. Could you tell me why your thought? Should we pass around the mic? Sorry.
Oh,
Why do you view anticipation as?
I see anticipation as like an excitement that's
something is
Going to
about to
happen.
happen,
Mhm.
or there's just, I call not butterflies, but
Don't look at him. You could say, go ahead. No, 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 no.
like
She's fine.
like I get such butterflies with such anticipation that there's something getting ready to happen.
Mhm. Okay. I never viewed anticipation as an emotion, but I think you're right. Excitement. Ooh, thankfulness. This is a really interesting one to me. I think we need to park at love for a moment. Who said love? Love. Okay. Do you view love as an emotion? No. Is love an emotion? Let's we're gonna go back to this, but is love an emotion? No. Okay.
I think you have feelings that associate with love. Like there are emotions that are associated with love.
Hmm.
So it's kind of hard to break it down, but love definitely is a choice. I think the world talks about love, like falling in love as an emotion, but real love is a choice.
Hmm.
So,
And I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I just want to explore it a little bit. So you're saying yes. Did anybody say no? That love is not an emotion. Tell me why.
I said love was a person.
Love is a person. Huh? That's interesting because that's the confused part of love, right? Is go on.
Yeah, because infatuation, like I can be infatuated with someone that would be completely worthy of such strong feelings, the choice of loving them more fully. But if I'm infatuated with someone that's going to do me wrong, that wouldn't really be love on their part.
Mhm.
It would only be on my end. So that isn't really.
Sometimes when somebody thinks they no longer love someone, they actually no longer feel affection for them.
Mhm.
It's not an absence of, it's the absence of the warm fuzzy.
So I like that because the affection portion is the actual feeling part or emotion part of love, right? The affection portion. But I'm not sure if love itself is a feeling. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I go ahead. Go ahead and hold on 1 second.
First Corinthians 13, 4-7, where it says about love, it says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Does not demand its own way, is not irritable, and it doesn't keep any records of being wrong. Does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith. It always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. So for me, love isn't, the patience is, the kindness is, the boastful, the pride, the rude, those ones.
So, yeah. Thank you for getting it. Yeah, go on. Could you just take on the mic? Yeah.
Oh, we're still talking about love. Sorry. Never mind.
Okay. Why did you want to put something up there?
Yeah, I just found one.
Go ahead and tell it to me, and so I don't want you to forget it. Go ahead and tell me that emotion. Huh? Oh, thank you. I know. Once Wikipedia says it, it has to be true. Has to be. Where on their list on Wikipedia's? I'll go change that in a minute. You could do that. Hold on. Check now. Now, okay, you said regret. Where do you want me to put it? Regret. Where do you want me to put it? You want me to put it here? Sometimes regret. See, okay. Ooh. That's a really good one. Thank you.
Ben, I wanted to go back to the love because when he
Yes.
was giving
Yeah.
the definition of love, okay, the things that love is are more character and action, but the things that love isn't are emotions. I thought was interesting.
I think we should go back and read it again. Let Mark say what he wants to say here. But I think we should read it again because you heard exactly what I heard. But go ahead, Mark.
I think love produces a whole range of emotions,
Mhm.
but I think we have relegated love in society to a feeling. I think the love that we're endeavoring to walk in is not a feeling. I think it's a cultural existence. It is a person, as Amanda said. I think that the world has given love a definition that's very emotional, romantic. But the reality is, when we step up into God's original design for love, it produces. I mean, I have felt extreme pain because of love,
Mm-hmm.
where most people would say that isn't. I believe that some of my very strong feelings of animosity have come out of my deep love for people.
Mm-hmm.
So when we walk in higher, what I believe God designed love, there's a whole range of emotions, from things that we would definitely not call love to things that we definitely would, that I believe all stem from the person of love.
Yeah. So, and I would add to that. I think that if love isn't producing certain emotions in you, you're probably not experiencing love. But to relegate it to only the emotions that you're feeling is also not a true picture of what love is. Okay. Um, if love was merely a feeling, or if love were merely a feeling, then according to how you feel is the measure of love that you would be able to produce. Okay. But there are times in our life where we need to get over the feeling and emotion part in order to express the level of love that we're actually capable of. So emotions, what emotions can really do for us is either enhance your capacity to love or decrease your capacity to love according to the stance that you take. Okay? And that's a really, really important point. And I'm glad we got to love, because you are right. When you read that, the things that it's not, it was more emotional, right? Jealousy, right? You read it again. Go ahead and read it again. Don't fight. Everybody gets a chance. Oh, that's
All right. Love is patient and kind.
okay. Patient and kind. I don't view those as emotions. Okay. Do you view those as emotions? Although there are actions, and kindness actually can come from an emotion that is righteous, like sympathy or empathy. Okay. But kindness is a characteristic, a trait in someone that can either be enhanced or at times detract according to the stance that you take. Go on.
Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude.
Okay. Jealous, boastful, proud. Okay. And
And
rude.
rude.
All seem to be more emotional. Rude, I guess, rude could kind of be more of a characteristic trait of a person. But they're all characteristics that when you focus on an emotion, only jealousy can come out. Okay. Now, at the same time, it's clear in the Bible that we have a jealous God. So we have to reconcile that. We have to reconcile him being jealous and us feeling like jealousy can be a unrighteous emotion, right? But it's the stance that the Father takes. And we're going to talk about that a little more. Go on.
It does not demand its own way.
Okay.
It is not irritable.
Okay.
Let me go back to that.
I'm going to say it does not demand its own way. That's a hard one for me. Okay. Because when we're talking about love and you have sympathy, or you have grief, or you're annoyed, you could start demanding your own way, right? Once again, it shows us that when you take the improper stance, it could lead to the emotions being the leader instead of the follower. I'm sure that you've heard this. Like, emotions are wonderful. They're poor leaders. Okay, they're great followers. They're poor leaders. Go on.
It is not irritable,
That's an emotion right there. Irritable.
and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance.
Yeah. So you'll see where it makes clear lines between emotional, like just a pure emotional response, and more of a characteristic trait. So I do not believe love is an emotion. I do believe, as Mark was saying, that it should elicit emotional responses. It should. Okay, you should get love out. You should get emotions out of love, and I do believe it's a choice. Okay, so you're not wrong in saying, you're not altogether wrong when you're saying, oh, love is an emotion. What you're experiencing there is the emotions that come out of love that sometimes overtake love. Any other emotions that you would want to put up here?
Well, let's put lust up there.
Lust. Okay.
So we would automatically go in the unrighteous. But then, there's a passage, there's a verse in Galatians that says, the spirit lusts. The old, I think it's the King James version said the spirit lusts against the flesh.
Hmm.
And so, if you look at it as desire, desire can be righteous.
Let me make it this word.
That's a good word.
Can I make it passion? Would that be fair?
I have two in my head.
Yeah.
One is safe. Can you
Safe.
say is safe an emotion?
Um, I think
Feel safe.
to feel safe. Yeah, I think you
Or
can
is
say
it
that. Is it
Secure.
secure? Secure is the word. Would you put that in righteous or unrighteous?
See, that's the thing. I think it can be both.
Okay, so I'll put it in both.
And while we're dual columns, I'm thinking guilt,
Oh,
but I think guilt has two perspectives. I think unrighteous is guilt, and I think righteous is conviction. Is that a fair thing to do?
I mean, I just did it, so I think it's
Okay,
fair
then
for you to
there
do
it
it.
is.
Like, that is spelled correctly. It was just more. Passion is in righteous. When we put lust in the unrighteous. Hold on one second. Would you put passion on the unrighteous side? We'll get to it. Hold on.
Passionate about unrighteous things. You can passionately pursue something that is.
Yes, and that's interesting because that falls under the six things that the Father hates. All right, and we could talk about that later, but that's one emotion that nobody has said yet is hate, hatred. Should I put that under unrighteous?
Is that the same as abhor? You can put it on the righteous side.
To what?
Abhor.
Abhor.
Did I say ab or Missionary Baptist said abhor. That's who's sticking with it.
Yeah. I want to talk about the hate one too, about that emotion. With the passion thing. Hold on one second.
So I looked up passion the other day, and it was interesting that all the verses that have passion in them, passion is a negative thing. And like everything that when I looked up through the NASB, that there's not one verse that I found that was not use the word passion in a positive way. So I don't know if that means anything, but
Do you want me to put it in the negative? Well, I put compassion with sympathy and kind of the same, yeah.
Well, passion in the Greek means suffering. So that means that you're so involved with something that you're suffering for it. And in my defense, like warmongers are passionate for what they're doing, but it doesn't mean they're correct by the humanity standards.
And I think it goes back to love in the stance that you take. So you could take the stance in an incorrect and unrighteous thing and be passionate about it, and you can convince yourself of its righteousness. and that's when you get into a problem with passion. So I would say that I don't know if I could automatically go to passion being a negative, because
I think it belongs in both.
yeah, I think it go in both. Okay. Are there any others that we want to put up here? Peace, righteous, obviously. Disgust. I think we have jealousy here. Yeah. Would that fall under anxiety or worry? Could we loop that in there? Like, yeah. Any others? I think betrayed may be a word that. Where do you want me to put it? Both. Hurt. I think Mark said earlier pain, but you would put that under righteous. Hurt, pain. Lonely. Would that be righteous or unrighteous? That's probably spelled wrong. Okay. I think that's a lot of emotions, right? That's a lot of emotions. And the one thing I want to do tonight, because I'm going to give you some work and then we're going to come back together. But there's a couple here that are on both sides. So anger on both sides, jealousy on both sides, fear right above jealousy. Yeah, pride is on both sides. Regret. All right. Sympathy is on both sides. So wait a minute. You guys need to help me out. All right. Sadness is on both sides. Thank you. Betrayed.
Interesting pattern emerging there, Ben.
Oh, what's the pattern that you're seeing?
That emotions can be both righteous and unrighteous.
Oh, you're getting to the end already. No, that's fine. The quicker you get to the end, the quicker we're at the end. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. Uh, doubt. Doubt. Secure. Hmm.
Insecure on the
Wrong side, Ben.
Because I wasn't looking. That's why. Do you disagree? Well, disagree in the mic. It's okay. Go ahead.
Some of my greatest growth seasons have been when I was insecure. When I felt like I was dangling out there, when I felt like I was unprotected, when I felt like I wasn't sure if I had solid ground underneath me. Those were some of the greatest growth seasons and moments in my life. It didn't mean I was insecure. It mean I felt insecure.
Okay. Do you think Jesus felt insecure in the garden? Yeah. So now I'm glad you brought it up, because it brought pause, right? Like, because we get this idea, we get this idea that there's these unrighteous emotions like fear. Did Jesus experience fear? Yeah. Did Jesus experience disgust? Yeah. Right? Okay. Did Jesus experience shame? Did he took our shame? What does Hebrews 12:1-2 say? He disregarded the shame in order to endure the cross. So he experienced shame, but in order to endure the cross, what did he have to do? He had to actually take that thing and put it to the side. So it's not that he never experienced shame. It was all on him at that point, right? So he experienced that. So yeah, I think there's a insecure can be here, but I think when you decide to make it a stance in your life, it's here. Right? When you decide that this is your position in life, when you have an insecure position in your life, now it's unrighteous. So what do you do with that insecurity when it pops up? Well, you have to either press through or you don't press through, right? If you don't press through, what does it become? It becomes a character trait for you. And that's the difference between someone who is secure and insecure, is they're able to press through the emotion and the feeling at that time and get into where it's supposed to bring them to. So Jesus in the garden experiences some insecurity, and he gets to the point where he can say, okay, not my will, but yours be done. Now he's able to go ahead and complete his call, his duty, the thing that he was sent to do. Okay. But it wasn't until then, until he pressed through that thing.
I think for me, the defining thing is there's a difference between how you feel and who you are. And when you've let how you feel become who you are, then that's where the unrighteousness comes into play. But when you identify how you feel and you feel the feeling and it produces a change in you, don't you look at me, Mark.
No, I think that was good. No,
It was a good look.
no, he was. Yeah.
No, I know. He's giving me the look like, yeah, this has been a growth process for me because feelings have led me to bad places. But when you can feel now you're flustering me. When you can feel the feelings.
Okay, go.
I feel father pressure.
All right. No, you're okay. Go on.
I love you, Mark.
Now Mark is feeling shame.
Okay. No. But when you can feel the feelings and identify the feelings and source them, like I learned from Autumn, then it can produce something that is righteous.
That is so good. When we get to the point where we define ourselves by our feelings, we're in a very, very dangerous place. Okay? Go on. Yeah. Why isn't forgiveness? But mostly because you were saying it, and I think that someone, we were talking, a bunch of people were talking at one time. But is forgiveness an emotion?
I think it is. Of course, you get a guilt feeling, and then you realize you have to forgive. You really have to get into your heart to forgive it.
Yeah, I hear that, but I kind of feel like if forgiveness was if it was simply an emotion for me, I probably would never forgive. Would never get to that point. Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna walk up to this person. I'm gonna ask them for forgiveness. I think there's a reactionary point of when you say I'm gonna ask somebody to forgive me, that you get an emotional wash. You know what I'm saying? Because you're like, I don't want to do this because all these things over here are in the way.
So is that fear? So is the emotion the fear?
That's what she's saying. I think that's what she's saying. It's emotional process.
Something wrong, you ask for forgiveness, and that person's still hurting. And how do you approach it?
Let me have the mic here. Somebody want? Oh, you couldn't. Yeah. Please.
I really do get what she's saying about forgiveness being a feeling, but let's think about this. If you knew that you had hurt me and I had forgiven you, I chose to forgive you. What's the feeling that results from me forgiving you when you knew you hurt me? I'm looking at you. I'm looking right at you. What are the feelings you feel when I say to you, because you've been burdened with the knowledge that you've hurt me, and I look at you and I say, I forgive you. What are the feelings that result?
Relief.
Free? Relief? So all you would feel is good. That's a feeling? There you go. Okay. Lighter? Okay.
I think where we're going is like love, forgiveness can elicit a range of responses when it comes to emotions. So while I'm not sure that forgiveness is itself an emotion, to what you were saying, the act of forgiving can bring emotions to both sides. So when I forgive, when I forgive someone, there's actually relief that I feel because I don't have to carry that thing anymore. There's joy that I feel because I don't have to carry that thing anymore. And for the person who's forgiven, they feel that same thing. Okay, there's actually this like unity in joy and relief when someone forgives and someone is forgiven and receives forgiveness. So I think that's those kind of range of emotions. I feel happy.
I don't here's the reason why I don't think forgiveness is a feeling the way we're talking about it is because we are told to forgive when we don't feel like it.
Mhm.
And when someone is continually in the same vein, in the same attitude, Jesus tells us to forgive how many times? 70 times 7. So at some point in time, I'm sure you're going to probably somewhere in the 100 to 200 range, you're probably going to think, I just don't feel like doing this anymore. So it shifts to a choice. And I feel like that's a really important delineation that we should be making in this discussion is because there are decisions that you and I have made that our feelings are saying, do not do that. Right? Yeah. And I think forgiveness is definitely one of them that, there's our pain, the offense, the hurt that goes along with some of those things, but we forgive anyway. And the results can be very emotional. So I think it's better to look at that particular subject as more of a choice and a decision based on the person of love than it is a feeling. Otherwise, I'm not going to forgive you until I feel like it.
And I think this is an important thing to understand because we don't always equate emotions with choice. We just say that my emotions are my emotions. And a lot of times what we do is we allow our emotions. Jen said this to me earlier today, and she said it better than I did. But she was telling me that many times we allow our emotions to give us an entitlement over our decision. Okay? Because I feel this way, because I feel hurt, because I feel pain, then I don't need to make the decision to forgive you because I need to be entitled in this feeling. And nobody needs to entitle your feeling. Your feeling is your feeling, right? But we get into this entitlement mode with emotions because we hinge on them to describe exactly what we should do many times. So I don't think forgiveness in that sense is an emotion, but it's a choice that we make that needs to be pressed through, even through emotions. Yeah. Yeah. And you shouldn't walk away from forgiving someone feeling upset about it, about the situation. Like at that point, look, he's encouraging you to drop those things. Okay. He's encouraging you to drop those burdens. So when you drop those burdens, you should feel those range of emotions. Okay. And he did say 70 times 7, right? And that means that's a big number. And it means that it's going to be an umbrella over times you don't want to. Yeah, you can say something. Who's going to stop you from saying something, man? Anyway, love you. Go ahead.
I've always wanted to say this in church.
Uh-oh. Wait, wait. Do we have an 8-second delay on the?
Shut down the recorder.
Yeah.
And this is not a jab at any church, denomination, culture club, whatever. But the thing is, yeah, culture. I just had to
that's
bring
fine.
up Boy George. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go on, Mike. You got it.
She got me back in the 80s now. I can't get. Here we go. So, an issue that I had growing up in the South with whip, snap, and bang type of rules and regulations inside of a missionary Baptist church. I love the missionary Baptist church. I just didn't like some of the rules. They would say something. Someone in leadership would say, all you got to do is forgive, man. Come on. What's going on in your life? Well, my wife slapped me. You just got to forgive. But then you walk over to the person that has 7,000 slaps, 400 punches, 8 years of poverty, and you walk up to them and say, you got to forgive whoever did this to you. I think we still talk about an act of forgiveness, that there's an emotional stretch in between that. I think there's some merit in maybe what she's saying, because it really depends, because I hate blanket statements in the church. I hate it. Abhor it. There we go. We use a religious word. I don't like it because it doesn't cover everyone. But whatever God says in the Bible should cover everyone, but he didn't put that timetable in there. He said, well, if you were abused as a kid, well, man, it may take you 30 years to get over that, and even walk up into a courtroom and say, I forgive you, you punk, for what you did to me. And you talk about emotional, you get that EKG and you hook it up whenever that event happens. And as they get older in life and they start processing all this garbage and they start to lose their dadgum mind, all of a sudden they're like, ah! And then God says, hey, man, you just got to let it go. You got to let go of all those chains that have you in bondage. And then you're like, Rrr!
Yeah. And there's that's really good. And I think what you explained there is exactly what you're talking about. There is that time. There's that time. And I don't know. You're right. I can't blanket statement and say, hey, you need to forgive. No. No, but I want to align myself with what you're saying, because I cannot turn to someone and say, you need to forgive now, and not understand the circumstances in which they've gone through. Would I want them to be able to forgive now? Like, in a perfect world, I would want someone to be able to forgive. But I think what we need to do as a family is help people to get to the point where they're able to forgive. And that's where that's where we mess up. We mess up so many times not valuing that someone has emotions leading up to this point where they're going to forgive. Okay? And we're just like, okay, get over it. Like, get over it. And that's not an easy thing to get over, especially with a lot of the circumstances that we face from people who are walking in the door, especially when it comes to someone who has been abused or, just abused in a myriad of ways. And us as a church, and I'm glad you brought us to this place, is we need to figure out how we take these emotions that are so raw and get people to press through them so they could get to the point where they could make the choices that will bring fruit. And that's where we're struggling. We're struggling with that. And I'm not saying World Harvest is struggling, but we are. You know what? I bet you we struggle with that. I've never sat down and said, and then thought about it and say, how many people have we not just walked through the emotional part and just said, hey, blessed are the people who are mourning. Well, people are mourning. Are we helping them mourn? I'm not sure.
I feel like I want to speak for Denise, because I feel her from the back of the room wanting to share. But this really is up her alley, and it's something that Denise has spent a lot of time influencing me on, and it's the idea of, okay, this is where you are right now. I'm going to be with you right where you are right now. I'm just going to be with you in this place. I'm not going to demand that you forgive in this moment. I want to be with you in this place. I'm going to love you in that place. And there begins the permission for them to walk past the current camp that they're in. That's not real healthy for them. So, did I speak your words okay? Was that? Yeah? See? Look at that.
Way to go, Denise. You know, and that is not entitling people. Okay? That is not entitling people. I mean, there is a point where a person needs to start moving past that thing, right? There's a point. But we only know that point walking through relationship with those people. I can't walk into anybody's life right now that I don't know and demand something. Like if I do that, I'm actually drawing a wedge. Like that person is going to look at me like I'm crazy. We can't do that. We need to be able to sit and walk through with people. Yeah.
I think this is an important point too, because in what I had been walking through for a long time, I felt like if I just keep loving, the right thing to do. But in that, it blinded me to other truth, and it kept me from getting out of something that was a very bad situation for me. So I think we do need to be careful, because in my situation, it was marriage. Who's not going to tell you keep loving, keep loving, keep loving, right? But for me, that was not the right thing to do. Not that I wasn't walking in love, but it was blinding me to taking action that was health for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to really use wisdom and discernment when we are walking with people, because not that anybody put me in that, but we can, with these blanket statements, box somebody into a situation where they, forgiveness, the process, like if there is abuse, like you may have been completely wronged. You don't want to stay in that situation, that unhealthy thing. It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's awkward, it's ugly, it's messy. So I love what Mark said, and I've heard that heart from Denise, I'm just going to love you right where you are, let you feel what you need to feel, and let's kind of move forward, from that.
Yeah, I have,
This is the real Denise, right?
It's me. Oh, heck no.
You got it.
No, I just kind of share my heart here. Like for me, for instance, even this past week, I feel like I'm grieving something that I don't even know what it is. Every night, I'm just grieving it. And so in that, I remember talking to my roommate last night about some nonsense. And I was grieving something, and you'll notice with people, here's the thing, we get frustrated, right? We don't want to sit with people's crap. Like, come on, get up, keep going, But what I've learned also in that is we're always paying attention to their crap, but I think at times the Lord wants us to, when you're with them, it's actually going to bring out stuff in you. And so like, you notice people that keep going in circles and circles, right? Those are the people you get annoyed with. Didn't I just talk to you about this? This is what you're supposed to do. And I've learned, at least from experience, that in those times, there's something way deeper than you can even touch. And normally it's a fear in you that doesn't want to go there, because it might, if we're being honest with ourselves.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times we want people to get over their emotions because we don't want to invest the time to help them get through them. Like that's just kind of like real, right? Like I could really use you to get over these emotions, because I would feel better if you would just feel better. Like that would be great for me. And I completely agree. I agree with what you're saying. Now, do I think there's a time where people need to get up and get going? Absolutely. But once again, I don't know if we invest enough time in what true empathy is.
Yeah.
And that's stepping into that person's shoes for a moment.
And even still, when you were talking up there, I think something that keeps coming back to my mind even this week is how love covers a multitude of sins. Something that's been really speaking on my heart is like, um, I don't know if this is biblical or not, but just Denise's mind. Like, even in those places where you want them to, come on, get up and walk now. Like, love covers a multitude of sins where I can't do it with this person. Like, because truthfully, we cannot change anyone. We can't push them to
Yeah.
do anything.
Oh, that's so good. I cannot change anyone.
Like, the reason why I think we hold so tightly, and at least for me, when I get frustrated at someone for not getting out of their emotions, is because, oh shoot, I lost them. I'll message you later about it.
Okay.
So, there we go.
I think you've hit on something really good there. I can't change anyone's emotions. And a mature person understands that the emotions that they have are the emotions they need to own. So you can't make me happy. I need to make that decision on my own. Like emotions, almost all of them are a decision, right? It's a thought process. It's a thought pattern, right? So I remember Jen and I walked through this thing where like we would say, you're making me mad. Like you're making me mad. Or what you're doing is making me angry. Until we got to the point, and we learned it here, to the point, we got to this point where we understood nobody can make me anything. I choose to be mad. I choose to be upset. There's nothing like, and this has really helped me and my wife. I haven't said this in, I don't know how many years. I've never said to Jen, you're making me mad, ever. Because now I'm putting the responsibility of my emotions onto her. And that's not fair. That's not fair. Because she could be doing something completely legitimate, right, righteous, and my response is anger. Right? So if I turned around and said, you're making me mad, now it's her fault. And my emotions are never anyone else's fault. And that's a hard one to deal with. That's a hard one to deal with. Okay? And that's where we need to help people get through their emotions, because really how do I say this? There's a time, and emotion does this to us, and the choice of our emotion, but there's a time where you are a victim of something, or you've been victimized, and there's a time where you become a victim. Okay? And when you're victimized, that means an event has happened to you. But when you become a victim is when you have made a choice to stay in that place. Does that make sense? Okay? And there are people that we need to help get out of that victim mentality because they've stayed in the space of that emotion. Okay? And that's when you become a victim, is when you stay in that place of emotion. I'm not saying, hey, you know what, you shouldn't be there, like we said earlier. I'm just saying, as long as you stay in the place of the emotion of the original event, you'll be a victim and you'll act like a victim. Okay? But when you're able to move past that part, and you're no longer in that emotional state, and for some people it takes years, but when you're able to move, you're no longer a victim anymore. And nobody can make you a victim. Events may happen to you, circumstances may happen to you, but now what I'm able to do is make a different choice. All right, I'm not going to become a victim because I'm not going to stay in that emotional state. I'm sorry, Effalo. Can we get Effalo to mic?
What gets hard to deal with that is a person chooses to make that victimization their identity, or any of those emotions. They make that their identity, and then it's
That is
very
so good.
difficult to get through that.
That is so good, because we see people, and that's the difference between being victimized and being a victim, is when you're staying in that place, you've taken on an identity. Look at this thing that happened to me, and we focus on that event that happened to me, and we no longer focus on our ability to make a different choice. And I'm not saying it's easy to make a different choice, but our identity is wrapped up on this thing, right? Like, I could stay a victim for as long as I want to, but you're trading victim for victory. Like, I could have victory, but I need to get over this thing. Like, okay, yeah.
So when I was sick, like really bad, still kind of crazy. I mean, like sick from my
Yeah.
head and stuff. I became a victim because I was so sick. I didn't know how to get through it. But the one thing that changed me was the people sitting right here in this room. You understand? I reached out. Finally, took me years, dude. I became my tumor. So I get what you're saying. And I decided to adopt that philosophy, and that's who I became. And it just about killed me. You understand? And then people kept running after me and saying, you know what, man, we're here. They didn't say, quit being a victim. They didn't slap me around. They said, we're here. We love you. We lift you up in your times. And sometimes you got to reach out past who you are.
Yeah, I think one thing, like, if you're confused, like, don't seek counsel from other confused people. Like, whatever emotion that you're feeling, if you're angry frequently, try not to be with angry people.
That is great. But why do we have why do we tend to do that? It goes back to what my wife was pointing out, because I want entitlement and validation of my feelings.
Because they will sympathize with you.
Exactly.
Because they know how
Exactly.
they're not being empathetic.
Yeah.
They're sympathizing.
I remember there's a quick story. I went to go visit my brother down in I think it was he was in Georgia, and we went mudding in his 4x4 in his Jeep. So we're going down this trail, and we're not supposed to be on the trail, but we're going down this trail, and he's in an army base. So we're going down this trail, and we get to the point where there's a Jeep stuck in the mud, like right ahead of us. Okay, like it's almost the exact same Jeep. So I don't know what these army guys like are into, but like they're stuck in the mud. So we want to help the guy. So he has a hitch in the front, right? And so he throws out the hitch and he hitches it together. Do you think we were able to pull him out? We got stuck because we were the same. Okay, we were the same. It was the same Jeep. Okay, so usually what happens is if you're angry and you go hitch on another angry person, what do you just have? You have two angries hitched together. Okay, like this is a problem. So this is exactly how we have to get out. We have to report it, which is what we didn't want to do, but they had to bring a like. They bring a Dodge in, They didn't bring a Dodge. They bought pretty much a tank. They pretty much brought a tank out. Like, yeah, well, I was like, either they're gonna shoot, maybe they're just gonna shoot the Jeeps and get out. Like, we'll get rid of this problem easy. Like, no, but they got a tank. Okay, they got a tank, and the tank easily was able to help pull us out of that mud. You need tanks in your life. Like, you need people. Yeah, but you need tanks in your life. You need people who are slow to anger in your life so that when you're angry, you can hitch on that person. Like, look, I didn't learn how to control my temper by hanging out with other short-tempered people. I didn't. And my wife can tell you, like, I had a short temper, but I started to be with people who did not show, almost to the point where they're like, are you ever going to get angry? Like, what's the problem here? Okay. But people who are slow to anger. And that changed me. That got me out of it. If I'm a jealous person, being around other jealous people is probably a bad idea. You need to like hitch on, and you need tanks in your life in different areas. And he's a tank in my life. So when I'm stuck, I don't know, he gets more text from me. Like, I need some advice here. I don't know what to do. And that is a mature son thing to do. Look, I think we get this idea that a mature, like a son, has all the answers. I think a mature son, knows where to get answers. Okay? It's not that you have to be right, it's you need to get it right. And getting it right means that there's sometimes I need to go to him and say, he didn't deal with this problem. He didn't deal with this emotion. He didn't get wrapped up in this thing. I need to go to him. I need to get that answer because it's not readily available to me and how I'm made up. Right? And God purposely made us need each other. I don't have half of the answers. I don't have a third of them. But what I have is a family with the resource. Like, look, I couldn't tell you how to deal with everything that you know how to deal with because of your experience, because of the things that you have gone through, the things that you know. And if I stay in my emotions and decide, hey, you know what? I don't need anybody else, I'm going to be stuck. But until the point where I could move outside of myself and outside of my emotions and say, you know what? I need these people.
I want to go back to the tank thing for a second. Because there are moments in your life where you are a tank and moments when you're not.
Really good.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom when you are fragile, because I'm a fixer. I like to fix everything. I like to make everybody good. But I think there's wisdom that when you know that you're fragile, not to get sucked in to somebody else's stuff. And on the reciprocating end of that, like on the opposite end of that, something that I'm learning is when we're reaching out to people, sometimes my stuff is too big for somebody else who wants to be there for me. And I can't take that as a rejection to me. I need to recognize, and in the moment, and this has happened to me recently because I'm dealing with big stuff, it was very painful for me because I felt rejection. But it was a process alone with the Lord to realize this is bigger than some people can handle. And part of loving them is respecting that that is too big for them, and I need to have the wisdom and reach out and connect with the people that can. So there's so many facets to that, and there's different times in your life where you can and where you can't. And I think we need to respect that in one another and not get offended.
That's good. I think, we can't be offended by the different, like I don't want to say levels, but we're all in different places in our walk, right? And we can't get offended by someone else's place. Yeah, you can't get offended by the season. But what you do have to do, you have to show wisdom, okay? You have to show wisdom in knowing when I'm the tank and when I'm the Jeep. All right. And there are times, we're getting near the mic, so I'm stalling. There are times where you need to be the tank for someone. I love that you're saying that because there are times you're going to be the tank for someone. There's sometimes you're going to be the Jeep. Yes. Yes. And that's why you need to have wisdom to know when you're not. Like, there's just times.
So this is my last thought, I promise.
No, you don't
Something that I've
commit
been
to that.
thinking through, like I'm finishing up reading through the Old Testament, and I notice a theme, and there's this theme of grieving and mourning, and it's like this. It's almost like a celebration, not a celebration, you know what I mean? But it's like it's onward. It's not like, okay, you got a day to mourn and get over it, you know. But it's like a coming together and mourning, and I think that also might be where the mourning. I think people might get over it, quote unquote, quicker if there was that, like with Karina and stuff. Like, she really had. What I felt from her, she has had really no one. She's had people here and there. I'm with you, but I think that the Old Testament, there was something about that where people, it was like not so you don't have to worry about who's the tank here, who's not. It's like you had enough people around you that were grieving in the loss with you.
Yeah.
That they were enabled, to go further.
Yeah, Kendall wants to take this.
I just wanted to speak to that for a second because, like with Job, his friends just came and sat with him for like, I don't know how long, like 7 days or something like that. And of course, they didn't have all the answers, right? But they were willing to be with him. And then at the end, it says Job was delivered when he prayed for his friends. So there's like a reward for just hanging in there and just being together. And so, a lot of what this encourages us is to really hang together and to really just process through with one another.
Yeah.
We might not have it all figured out, but yet, just being together and hanging in there for the long haul. And even if it's somebody that, we might not know too well, but we're just, because we say things like, I'm with you. We say it on Facebook all the time. We say it. And some people, honestly, it rubs them the wrong way. Because, I think you probably have had people say, well, you're saying you're with me and, nobody's with me, but we're learning to be with one another. So at least for me, and I want to share it with all of you, the encouragement is let's continue to learn together on how to be together.
Yeah. I think that's good because our relationships are actually solidified through not the good times. They're actually solidified by the hard times that people walk through. So like that woman right there, yes, she's my wife, but she's my best friend. She has walked through with me through the hardest times ever. We experienced them together. It wasn't the honeymoon that solidified us. It was walking through that hard time. The honeymoon's just, that's fun. All right. It's the time that's not that fun that she walked with me through that I can now look back and say, wow, if she walked through that with me, then she'll walk through anything with me. Anybody, like anybody could walk through a honeymoon. Like that's the easy part.
Yeah, Ben, I just wanted to address that where you were talking about the tank. I remember when I was stuck in my addiction, that I was that Jeep, and then the tank came, which was Alcoholics Anonymous, and then it got to a point where that tank didn't do any more for me. So I looked through that, and then that program told me I needed a God of my understanding, which I didn't have at the time. So another tank in there told me I needed to move on, and strip myself of that label of being an alcoholic, being a drug addict, because those labels kept me bondaged,
That is
and
so good.
I keep hearing, I forget his name, the man up there, but every time I come here, and it burdens my heart when he says I'm recovering this or recovering that, because my God said, as far as the east is from the west in Psalms, I see no sin.
Yeah.
So he doesn't see an alcoholic, he doesn't see a recovering addict, and he brought me here. Now I have even a bigger tank here that's telling me I'm none of those labels that quote unquote society put on me. I'm a son of God.
Yeah.
And
There you
that's
go.
far beyond more what I ever would have got if I would have just stayed with that first tank and just kept sitting in AA meetings and saying, man, there's nothing more
So
I'm getting
good.
out of here.
Yeah.
So, I learned that I had to remove
Yeah.
myself from that first tank to move on to a bigger tank.
Yeah.
And that's a grateful, I'm glad there's tanks in here that bringing me beyond where I was, because I would have been stuck if I would have just
That's so good.
stayed with one tank.
Yep. You know what? Usually tanks are secured in their tankness, and they'll tell you, "Hey, you need to go to this one, because this one's going to get you to that next level." I love what you're saying.
I just wanted to say one more thing, circling back to what I had said and how Denise responded about being together. Because I think sometimes we just don't know what to say. And Mark said something that was really helpful to me, because when I was reeling in my emotions and feeling alone, he asked me how he could be with me. And then that forced me to stop and think, well, what is it that I need? What is it that I want? Because I didn't even know. Do you know what I mean? So I think sometimes when people are going through hard things, especially the really ugly, hard stuff, we don't know what to say to them. So just ask. I think I wouldn't have thought of that if you hadn't have asked, but then that's what actually made me think about what is it that I really want / need in this moment? What is going to be helpful, and what is fair to expect of people? Because it was not only was I unsure and uncertain in my situation, so if I was uncertain, how could people who are not in the situation really, know?
Yeah.
So I think just because I don't want anybody to feel bad, not just for me, but in any situation where you feel like, I feel bad that I wasn't there. I think sometimes we have to also just have grace and realize that people don't always know how to be there. And and I didn't know what to ask for, but just talking that through made me start to think and process things differently and kind of get past it to where then I was just good with God. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was just like, it's kind of like when your kids are scared, like when they're in the water and it's 2 inches and they're flailing around like they're drowning, and then they just stand up and it's like, oh, okay, I'm all right.
That's a great analogy, because you could never stand outside of the water and convince your child that they shouldn't have fear of that thing. But only until you walk into it and they stand up do they have a realization of it. And I love that. I love that, because you're not going to be able to you can't take what's in your mind and download it into someone else's mind when they're going through that. Like, you ever
And in
see
that
like
moment,
somebody
you're-
who's drowning and you just say, just stand up, and like they're standing there, like they're not hearing just stand up. They need to get their legs under them, feel the ground, and then they stand up. They probably didn't hear you at all. So a lot of times, most of the stuff you say goes in one ear and out the other when someone is in that emotional time.
But I think what you just said, like, is a good point. In those moments, you almost have to touch the person and help them to stand up. So sometimes it's not what you say, it's that physical action, because that's how I felt emotionally. I felt like, and it wouldn't have mattered what anybody said, really, because I was reeling from the emotions.
Yeah.
Like, there needed to be, well, I guess it didn't matter what you said, it was the way that you said it. Like, instead of giving me advice, asking a question, which was almost like symbolic of that physically like touching and saying, okay, look around, assess this, like asking, how can I be with you? What is it that you need? So then it paused me to think about, oh, well,
What is it that I
what
need?
is it that I need?
Yeah.
And it was really good. So thank you.
That's good.
Love you.
Yeah.
Just, have you ever been to a Haitian funeral? You know what I'm fixing to say next, because we talk about unity and being with one another and processing things. In a Haitian funeral, man, they make, bam. I mean, there's 30, 50, 100, 1,000 people burying one person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think God's got the human race wired so closely that when they're in contact with each other, their emotions, instead of going down, go up.
That's good.
Hear that?
Somebody else.
Two things on the Haitian wedding thing. The thing I remember the most is that the what? The Haitian, what did I say?
Wedding. Please don't get weddings and funerals mixed up. Single people, they're not the same. They're not the same.
The Haitian funeral
Yeah.
is that for a while I couldn't tell who were the closest ones to the deceased. Because everyone was mourning like it was their closest relative. It was, that's what I thought you were going to say. I mean, there was so much wailing going on that I was like, okay, who's mom and who's dad here? Because there was a kid. Yeah.
There's people out here, if you're 8 hours away and they come to join this funeral, they're so closely knitted in that group that they feel, it's like when the rah-rah goes on, or down like the Mardi Gras down in Jacmel. If you get into town, people, it's like a snake. They all move together because they're so closely joined in what they're doing. And even in the weddings, they're the same way, Mark.
Oh, see? Right, weddings.
See, you were fine. Yeah. Funeral wedding.
The other
6 of
thing I
one,
wanted-
half a dozen the other.
We're taking analogies farther than they need to go, and I like to do that.
Yeah.
But in the swimming analogy, when the bottom's right there. But when they're in panic mode, the
Yeah.
idea of the bottom being right there is crazy. I remember being lifeguard training that when you finally have to dive in and get somebody, you have to grab hold of them and hold them so hard that I remember one of my trainers saying, if you have to knock them out, go ahead. Like, I mean, literally, you've got to hold them like this. And if they keep struggling and keep struggling, he actually just goes pop them.
Yep.
Just pop them because they will drown you too.
That's good.
And that's back to your two
Yep.
Jeeps thing. Is
Yep.
that if a tank doesn't dive in after that person, if they're not willing to go where the bottom is, then you literally have to just go. And I never had to do that, thank goodness. But that's how they trained us to do it. That's pretty weird.
That's good. That's good. It wouldn't be the first time. I don't feel so. Yeah, victim. I'm so scared. Okay, I want to going back here, and I don't think we're going to do what I wanted to do before, but that's fine with me. I'm very close to saying that there are very few emotions that don't bridge the gap between righteous and unrighteous. I'm actually pretty confident that I can find, for the most part, instances in the Bible where the Father or Jesus operated in one that would bridge what we would think is righteous or righteous. So I think about fear and Jesus in the garden. Regret. I mean, that's a hard one. Like the Father actually, there was a time where he regretted making man. And I mean, if you look at it in the King James, it says that the Father repented for making man and regretted. In the Message, it said man had broken his heart to a point that he had regretted creating man. That's some things that we need to work through, like, and understanding that, hey, God actually at one point regretted that. So, I mean, I could see plenty of times where our actions have moved God to sadness and grief. I mean, if we don't think that that's true, we have to look into the word, into the Bible more, because it's pretty apparent. And there's times where we should have grief, and it says it actually in 2 Corinthians, that there is godly grief that pushes us towards repentance. So these aren't bad things. I don't know if they can be categorized. We did this tonight because we've been conditioned to think that certain emotions can either be righteous or unrighteous. And I don't think it's the emotions that are righteous or righteous, it's your stance. So if we talk about maturity, and this is kind of where I want to end up on, I think about 1 Corinthians 13. And in that it says, when I was a child, I used to speak like a child, think like a child, reason like a child. But when I became a man, I did away with childish things. There's not one emotion here that you didn't feel as a child and feel as an adult. Okay? But you process them differently. I can remember being fearful as a child over something, and I can remember being fearful as an adult in something. I process those things differently. I process them now as a son. So when I have fear, I allow that fear to propel me to the Father. Fear is not a bad thing if it propels you to the Father. If it isolates you into the thing that you are, then you are in a bad place. But if it propels you to the Father, you're in a really, really good spot. All right? Even, I would say, there are things that we should hate. And if they're things that God hates, we're probably in a good spot if we hate them too. We don't like this word because we think it's the opposite of love. But there are things, and look in Proverbs, there are things that God hates. Lying tongue is actually mentioned, false witness mentioned twice, the shedding of innocent blood. I mean, These are things that God hates, and we probably should align ourselves with that. Now, how we process it. When I was a child, my hatred for those things would probably show in rage. But as an adult, how I process that should be like the pursuit of justice for these things. And you see the difference from when childish kind of actions and mature actions. So I think the best way to look at it is do you decide to use the filter of love or the filter of emotions? Okay. You could make a choice to make emotions your filter, or you can make love your filter. So the servant, the slave, or the orphan allows emotions to be the filter of love, and that becomes reaction. You react out of that. Here, my filter is emotions. I'm feeling upset. So now I process love that way, and now I react in a way. But a son filters through love, sees love, and then is able to process the emotion and then responds. And that's way different. That's a son standpoint. All right. My whole filter is love. That means that I can operate in all of these emotions and they can be righteous. Okay. But if my filter is not love, if my filter is simply the emotion, then it can be very unrighteous. So that's where I think as we walk into maturity, we need to become so much better at filtering our emotions through love and not just using love as using emotions as the filter.
That's
Thank you.
good stuff, brother.
Thank you.
I mean, that is good.
Whew.
Come on.
So like even like tonight, I think about that instance where what Denise was talking about. I know that there's some people who are struggling getting through the emotion part. And if I stack my emotions on top of their emotions, it's going to be an explosive situation. And if I filter it only through emotions, but if I could filter it through love, then my emotion can be sympathy for them. It will never be that way if I only filter it through emotions. I'll actually use sympathy to enable them instead of empower. And our emotions are meant to empower us, not to enable us. Oh, and
I had a Horseshack moment. And if you're under 35,
Mr.
you probably won't get that
Kata.
reference.
Yeah, no, I got it.
I know you did.
Yeah.
Oh. I said I had a Horseshack moment. Oh.
Mr.
Miss-
Kata. Sorry,
that made
everybody
me feel
else.
good.
You have the
Okay.
deal.
So here's my thought.
Yeah.
If your response to someone's emotion points them in the direction of their sonship, that's how you know that it's filtered through love.
Yep.
If it's pointing them towards maturity, thank you, Mark. Instead of, so like if it's producing in them like the entitlement or the poor me or the that,
Yep. Go
then
on.
you're heading towards the orphan. If it's pointing them towards put on your big girl pants and man up, yeah,
Or woman
or
up.
woman up,
Like,
put on your whatever.
yeah.
Because I have been in church for a really long time, and I have not experienced the level of freedom and / growth in all those years leading up that I have experienced in 6 months of time. I mean, yeah, the Lord was preparing me and I got little bits of growth here and little bits of growth there. I think the reason why the church stays the way it is because it's like deliverance. You see all those deliverance movements where you have to vomit and people do a snot flying and exorcist stuff. But when you just love somebody, that stuff just goes. Like there's a whole maturity that goes with it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
That was recorded, right? It was good. Okay.
Do I
Make
get
that
an
the
A?
intro. Can we get the mic back? Yes. when you are pointing someone to your son to their sonship and the realization of their sonship, you know that the filter is love and not emotion. Okay. When it's the other way around, you know that your filter is when you're pushing them towards an orphan spirit, you know that the filter is emotion. Okay. Yeah.
As far as like some of the subjects that are on both sides, I think really what it comes down to is like the intention behind it a lot as well too, because really something that like even like me and Lord were talking about recently is just like the way like certain emotions I had in me that I was like, okay, I think that they were wrong, and realizing that he's just using this to draw out the sonship in like for the thing that I'm experiencing now, and what would be like like he knows that like certain emotions he has to use in certain moments for us to go to the direction that we need to go, and just his intention, his love being funneled through the emotions sometimes.
That is awesome.
But also it's also ties in the whole wisdom thing as well too, because it's this thing that's just like, hey, if he can't reach just for this emotion right now, he's going to go through other things that we maybe are struggling with and use that. But I mean, sometimes it just takes us. Like I'm like, just accepting that, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Obviously, he's doing something through this, and just being open to that, not just writing it off as being this fleshly kind of thing.
That's so good. Like, yeah.
So an emotion that we didn't put up there was freedom or free, but Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." So kind of a parallel way of what you're saying here is that if I know Jesus in each and every one of these emotions, I'll be free. So I want to help others to know that, and I want to learn that myself.
That's good. I think the one thing that we at World Harvest, the one thing that we could commit to you is that we're going to nudge you towards your sonship. Okay. So you're not going to get from us a lot of, yeah. Now, what we need to understand is when sitting someone and allowing them to get through that portion of mourning and them understanding their emotions is still pushing them towards sonship, but we're never going to push you backwards towards an orphan spirit. So forgive us if there's times where the conversation towards you may feel a little sharp. Okay, that's love too. I hope you know that. Like a direct conversation about where do I have time to tell this feedback? Do I have 5 minutes? Okay, I told this to Mark earlier. I'll tell you the best feedback I've ever gotten from a professional standpoint. I was working at Target, okay, and I was doing rather well, and I was on the path of promotion, but there was this one thing that was bothering me, and I started complaining to my boss. Like I was really like laying into her and complaining, and I was like, these things. Basically, I was like this is unjust. Like I didn't say that, but that's what kind of like I was like, this is not right. This needs to happen. This needs to happen. He looked at me, and you know what his feedback was? He went like this, wah, and left the room. I was so mad. I was so mad because I was like, he didn't listen to me. He didn't hear my issues. He didn't hear anything I have to say. He didn't validate my feelings about this thing. All right. Half an hour later, he comes back to me. I'm on the floor. Half an hour later, he comes back to me and he says, "Why would you waste talent in complaining?"
You're writing that down.
Why would you waste talent in complaining? Complaining has never brought about a promotion. Now, this dude, like, he's not like, I mean, It's not somebody who goes to, I mean, he spoke wisdom into me that made me realize that the Father is working through people you wouldn't even expect him to work through. Now, do I get into times where I complain? Yes. Have I caught myself faster than ever? I have. Mostly because I am not interested in wasting my talent in complaining, and complaining is actually brought about by emotions that are not checked and not truly understood. Okay? So if you ever, and here's some advice in your professional life. You feel the need to complain, transfer that into finding a need to bring about solutions, not complaints. If you bring solutions and not complaints, you will bring about promotion. And I'm not saying you're going to get, I'm saying in the sight of those people, you will be promoted. You will be lifted up. Into developing solutions. Don't sit in your complaint. Like when I became a manager over managers at Amazon, I never once allowed a complaint to come to me without a solution coming as well. Ever. So when somebody sat there and had valid complaints, I needed to hear solutions. Because if they didn't give it to me, go back and bring me some solutions. Because I'm not here to fix your problem. I'm here to enable you to understand how to fix your problem. Like I want to walk out there. I love the person who comes up to me and says, "Hey, Aaron, this was the problem, and this is what I did to fix it." Love those people. Because the person who just stays in their emotions are just going to complain to me and say, "Fix my problems." And those people are not going anywhere. I guarantee you they're not going anywhere. And I would rather have the person who says, "Aaron, I had this problem. I tried this thing and it didn't work." I would always take that person. I will always take that person and say, "Okay, let's look. Okay, this is maybe where we went wrong. Try this next time." Always take that person. Always. Oh, yeah, complaints are. Did you have?
Just really quick, I wanted to say about like when you said about love being, the harsh stuff that comes along with it. I feel like this needs to be on the recording because I've been walking through a lot of this lately. And I think this is where we run into problems. Chances are, if you feel angry about what someone said, you have to stop the angry feeling and think about, if I know that you love me, because Mark has pissed me off a lot recently.
Yeah.
But I know that he loves me. And so I would come back to that. Like, I know that he loves me. Okay, so let me think about this. I think some of the things that are happening, like within our family and with any family, you hear those hard things and you get angry. If you don't ever get past that, like sometimes you can get confused in your anger and then feel entitled and justified and hurt and wounded, and then that takes you down the whole path. But I would say if your response is anger or woundedness or whatever it is, and you know the person loves you, you should really settle into that and let the Lord work it out in you, because you're going to get over it quicker. There's a growth opportunity and you're going to be real happy on the other side of that. Yeah, you
Yes.
trust the heart of the person that's providing it, even if it's not provided in the right way, in the way that you want it. That has just been strength to me. I don't like it, for the record, but I love what it produces and I honor that. And I'm grateful for the people who do it.
And I'll go back to Hebrews 12, where it says, "Because of the joy awaiting me, he endured." Not because of the joy that I have right now, I endured, but because of a joy that is coming, I endured. He endured. Dawn raised her hand, so if Dawn raises her hand, she gets the mic.
Okay, so I was thinking this earlier after you said your first statement, Karina, about how how if we're being told something away from orphan into sonship, then we know the filter is love. I think you said something along
Yeah.
those lines too. So, and then I was thinking, well, the recipient doesn't always understand that as love.
Yeah.
And it goes along with what you said. But I've come to the knowledge I would rather be loved than to be petted. Nothing grates me more than someone not being honest, but just saying, "Yeah, you're right,
That's
or
so good.
you're okay here," or you know, in me with me in my misery,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
I'd rather be
So
loved
I'd rather
than flattered.
be loved than
I-
flattered.
yeah.
Yes, that's a good way to say
And
it.
I think one thing, when you're the one giving love and that person doesn't understand it, you need to fight the urge to move back and be like, oh no, okay, I'm sorry. You know what I said was harsh to you, and you have to fight that urge. Okay, you have to understand that you're bringing revelation, and just because the seed is not showing, it's not growing at that point, doesn't mean that it's not growing underneath, right?
How many people were here last week and heard that story that Diane shared about the guy born blind or developed blindness? You remember that story? Would you really quickly tell it for those that didn't raise their hand? Because I think it's a beautiful illustration of what Dawn just said.
The guy was not born blind, but was made blind as a toddler. And he learned that if he clicked with his tongue, he could develop like a sense. His brain could learn to respond to the sound waves and develop a picture of what was around him like a bat does. So and he could see around him. And he feels like many blind people could develop this skill, but they're actually, quote, loved too much that they never actually develop the skill because they're protected from being wounded, because someone to develop that skill would have to fall down a lot and have many injuries and actually probably severely injured sometimes. But the parent, or specifically the mother, loves and protects that child from actually developing sight.
Um, yeah, I mean, I get to work with beautiful little blind kids every day. And I'll tell you something that's hard is when I have a substitute come into my room just to help me for the day, because they see these blind kids and they want to do for them. They want to unzipper their backpack and hand them a tissue, or, lead them where they need to go. But, it's really important that these kids get up and get their own tissues, even if that means they might bump into something on the way, or that they learn to step down off of the curb. There's two of my kids who are just struggling year after year to learn how to step down off of a curb, and they approach that curb every single day with such fear that they're going to fall off. And it's not love for me to just hold their hand and say, here, honey, I'll help you down off the curb every time. It's love for me to say, use your cane, find the curb, you can step down, because I don't want them to have someone holding their hand when they're 20.
So good. I think that's an exact picture of when sympathy becomes unrighteous. So when sympathy allows someone to stay in that orphan spirit, you've just made sympathy unrighteous. Yeah.
I mean, sort of going back to the sea analogy you said as well too. I mean, there's times where we just, I don't know, it's sort of a fine line how this works, because there's a difference between being responsible to help people with their stuff and then being responsible like to them as well. Like, especially like the whole sea thing, like there's times where you just gotta put it out there and just like, okay, like we're with them and that kind of thing. But at the same time, like we have to let them like, go through some of the growing process as well too. But I mean, but at the same time, I just know we tend to just sometimes step over this boundary sometimes, because like, okay, this is the boundary that should be between them and God that they should be developing, but we feel like we have to step in there and help them. But I guess really just that, I don't know, it's a learning process. We got to walk free and figure that out. But I know
Yeah.
that's sort of how I see it. But
That's awesome, because there is a difference between a responsibility to someone and a responsibility for someone. So when I have a responsibility for someone, that means I have to do the things for them. But when I have a responsibility to, then I say, get your cane, you could step down. Because my responsibility to someone is for their growth, not for their action right now, not for their need for a tissue, not for their need for their backpack to be open, not even for their need to step down on a curb. My responsibility to them is for the long haul, for their sonship out here. And if we cloud our judgment by being responsible for them, we'll never get to them. We'll never help them to get to that place.
So responsibility for exists only until they are capable of developing the maturity that you can be responsible to them.
Absolutely.
And it contends for their maturity.
Yeah, because there's times where yes, when someone is new, there's going to be a time where you're responsible for certain things, like an infant. But there comes a time when, I think about Jonah. There was a time where I served him his cereal. If I had to serve him his cereal right now, I would be really annoyed at this point. Really annoyed. Yeah.
At my old job, I worked alongside this kid who was mentally disabled. He had been hit by a car when he was a child, so he had the brain capacity of like an 8-year-old, but he was the same age as me. And when I talked to him like I would talk to you, and whenever he said, Philip, come help me, and he would do something, I'd say, EJ, you do it. And he'd say, Philip, and say something or another. And I'd say, EJ, no, just stop. And people say, well, you're mean to EJ. I was like, no, I treat EJ as a person because EJ is a person. But everyone else, like, they would baby him because of his disability, and they would quickly become burnt out and annoyed by him.
Yeah.
And I never did. Now, not to say that he didn't unhinge me sometimes, but then I'd tell him, EJ, you're getting on my nerves.
Yeah.
Stop. EJ, go away. Go do this. And they're like, you're mean to EJ. I'm like, no, EJ is a person. EJ is not a child. Treat EJ like you would treat me, and EJ will follow along.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is something about getting people up to the level, to the standard, and you can't do that through babying. We could probably talk about this all night, but I want to be respectful of your time and what you need to do tomorrow. So I thank you for this conversation, because you've enlightened me on so many things, on things I need to work on, especially when it comes to sitting with people and helping them through their emotions so that we can point them through sonship. So go make sons out there by doing that, by doing everything that we talked about today. Thank you. Love you.